We will start also starting the webinar. Have a
All righty. Well, welcome everybody to the last meeting of the year of the Thurston Regional Housing Council. It's December 14th, and we'll keep with our tradition of acknowledging who's here by way of jurisdictions. Pardon my cough. Why don't we start with Olympia?
Hi, everybody. Danny Madrone, Olympia City Council. I am expecting Jim, so I'm sure he'll be here soon. And then our staff here are Darian Lightfoot and Rich Hoy. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so.
Thank you, Danny. Moving on to Tumwater.
Joan Cathy from the City Council, and we have our City Administrator, John Doan, and our Planning Director and Housing Guru, Brad Benton. Michael Althauser will not be here today.
Excuse me. Sorry, Thurston County.
There's
Hi, Carolina Mejia, and joining me today, I have Tom Webster, Keely Marino, just a nostalgist. Our county manager seems like he hasn't joined us yet, but I think that is it for Thurston County.
Okay, Carolina, I am not doing too well here. Could you take over chair and I'm Carolyn Cox from Lacey, and could the rest of the Lacey staff identify themselves, please?
Everybody, Ryan Andrews, Planning Manager with the city.
And I'm Andy Ryder, Mayor Lacey.
And I'm Kelly Adams. And if there is anybody who is in the attendee space that should be in the panelist space, please let me know.
Okay, so Carolina, are you good to go?
Yeah, give me one, okay, there we go. Sorry, my camera keeps up, so, and my chair doesn't go any taller. Problems of being short. But yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
So we've gone ahead and done introductions. And Tom, could you pull up the agenda? So this is the review of the agenda. Are there any questions before we get started with public comment? I'm not seeing any hands or. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward with public comment.
Vice Chair Mejia, we did not have any registrations for public comment. So if attendees could raise their hands, I'd be happy to promote them for them to speak.
I'll wait a little bit on that. Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hand in the attendees list, so we'll go ahead and move forward with the approval of the November 9th minutes. Did everyone get a chance to review them?
Move approval.
Moved. Is there a second? I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, are there any nays? Hearing none, meetings have been approved. Okay, moving straight into the proposed pilot project to reduce smoke and hazardous burning in encampments. And if we can go ahead and, hello, County Manager. Ramiro has just joined us right now. But Kelly, could we move Ty Gundel and Jeff Johnston? And I saw other Orca staff in the attendees list as well.
Yeah,
Dan,
Ty Gundel and Jeff Johnson are coming in now.
can we also do Dan Nelson, please? Perfect. Keely, I'm handing this straight off to you.
Great. Good evening, almost evening, Regional Housing Council. I am glad to reintroduce for this month's meeting, Ty Gundel from Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, or OLYMAP, and Jeff Johnston and Dan Nelson from Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency. They've come back to present answers to the questions that the Regional Housing Council had about this pilot program, and to share information that is on meetings that they have had, conversations that they have had, in order to answer those questions for you tonight. And so I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, Keely. I did momentarily go see, I had the ability to share my screen, but I'm not seeing it anymore. Well, from the host, if I should have that ability right now.
Kelly, do you know?
I'm so sorry, the audio broke up there for just a moment. Could you restate that question?
Yeah, do I already have the ability to share my screen? I'm not seeing it on my end.
I am sorry, you should have the ability to share. Tom, were you able to share earlier?
Oh, I got it here now. We're
perfect.
good.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. Alrighty, so hi everyone. Good to be back again. I know you all have a tight agenda tonight, so we really wanted to focus our time with you guys on just focusing on the update since we met with you all in November, and also just to respond to some of the specific feedback we heard from you, and happy to do refreshers about what we talked about last month or go into more details once we've gone through the updates and have time for some discussion. But to start, so Jeff and I and our teams have continued to work closely together to develop the details of the pilot, including desired outcomes and the strategies and how the strategies are connected to those outcomes. And there's more details on that in the updated proposal that was sent out to you all. But again, happy to talk about that more during the time we have for discussion. We also have taken steps together to work on how we are coordinating data collection related to this project between ORCA and OLYMAP, so making sure we're using like the same language, categorization measures, et cetera. And also just to add that I think if this pilot moves forward, we're hearing a lot of interest from local fire departments and being involved in that part of the pilot as well. So another part of our work together has been clarifying ORCA's role in the pilot, and I'll let Jeff speak to that. Want to go ahead and take that away, Jeff?
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Ty, and thanks to the Regional Housing Council for having us back today. I wanted to mention that the rationale behind ORCA's support for the proposal, ORCA's goals for the pilot project, the performance measures that we plan to use in assessing the effectiveness of the project, and ORCA's contributions to the project are described in the 2-page addendum, which is part of your packet on page 11 and 12. So definitely take a look. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. To briefly mention or to talk about the things up here on the slide, one of the questions that we had at the November meeting was about ORCA's contributions to the project. So subsequent conversations, basically where ORCA is since reducing the amount of garbage burned is the #1 goal of the project for ORCA, Orca's financial contribution is focused around camp cleanups and removing garbage from the camps. And so based upon estimates from OLIMAP, camp cleanups costing around $1,500 a piece. So Orca will contribute $6,000 to fund 4 camp cleanups, presumably 2 camp cleanups at the jungle and 2 at Percival Creek. Also, again, Orca's certainly been spending time and effort in moving this project forward. So that's the contribution. And then, as many of you are likely aware, Orca is working to update our rules, which currently prohibit campfires in Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. And that ban limits the options for residents of these camps, and frankly, also for the folks providing them with supplies with regards to staying warm, cooking their food, or purifying water. And so I don't want to get into all the details and sidetrack this, except to say that that rule change I see as it's separate, but it's connected to this because it will provide, I think, more options for camp residents, as well as those, again, helping to supply the camp residents. So that's Orca's contribution. So at that point, I think I'll turn it back over to Ty.
Thank you, Jeff. So the most significant change since we were here in November is the increased budget ask for this proposal. And this increase reflects a lot of the feedback we've heard, but also just really what we agree is really needed to better assure that we're going to reach the desired outcomes for this project. And the increase is tied specifically to a drastic increase in the supplies and services part of the budget. And the reasoning here is that really, this project was built around the understanding that, regardless of the amount of outreach and education, as long as folks don't have access to safer alternatives, they're going to continue to use less safe and more hazardous alternatives for warming, cooking, garbage removal, et cetera. So really the success of this pilot hinges on our ability to create unprecedented access to these sorts of resources in the best ways we can, short of being able to provide indoor housing and shelter for folks. So our updated budget reflects that, and the details are broken down in the budget that was sent out to you all. But just for example, among other things, this increased budget ask would allow us to provide significantly more ongoing warming, cooking, garbage removal, lighting, water purification supplies for these sites. And it would also allow for us to provide up to 50 people with propane resources per week, and I can talk more about that later too. But while this truly would represent an unprecedented access to these resources for many people, I'm sure you guys can hear from the numbers that even that doesn't meet the full need of these sites. But we do believe it would absolutely be enough to make a significant impact and really increase the chance that we're going to see the types of outcomes that we want to see through this, both because of the unprecedented access, but also because being able to provide these sorts of resources at this level also will likely really fast track resident buy-in and engagement in this project, which is really crucial for success too. And the last thing I wanted to point out here is that I think that even though it's not specifically tied to this proposal, I think an investment in a pilot like this is in many ways also a significant investment in our region's hazardous weather response efforts. Thurston County has supported and funded hazardous weather response, including shelter-in-place support for camp communities for quite a few years. But the supplies and services that would be provided through this pilot go far beyond that. And it would also mean being able to provide ongoing weatherization and warming support for a lot of our unsheltered community members, which could also reduce the amount of crisis and crisis response needed during hazardous weather events like Haute Blues at this site. So some of the specific number updates, so the funds we're asking for would allow for us to provide 2 staff for this project, the supplies and services that we just discussed, plus more, some basic operation supplies, gas, printing, materials, et cetera. And our minimum ask for launching this pilot is the number we brought to you all last month, about 74,000 or as close to that as possible. Again, our updated ask we think is much more likely to get us to where we want to be and see the results we want to see. But we do believe we would see positive outcomes and impacts through this too. Our ideal and updated ask right now is roughly between 108, 112,000. So Jeff and I also had the pleasure of meeting with Chief Brooks, Chief Hurley, and Fire Marshal Haynes to talk about this project and get their input. It was a great conversation, and I think, really generally what we heard was support for this project, the strategies we've talked about so far, and the outcomes we've identified, and also a lot of interest in continued collaboration on this. And also just want to highlight that what we also heard was a lot of recognition of the need for and the importance of outreach and increasing outreach and access to survival supplies and educational opportunities for folks. We also talked a lot more about propane and safer fuel resources and came to good agreements on that. So happy to provide more details if that's something y'all would like to hear as well. And just to quickly list through some of the specific intended and identified outcomes that we're looking at right now based on these conversations. We've talked with ORCA and fire departments about tracking the number of, frequency, and types of complaints and concerns that are coming in, as well as calls for service. Tracking the amount of garbage removed, the amount and type of supplies distributed, and also, of course, gathering feedback and input ongoing from stakeholders and people impacted by this project. And one of the ways we would want to do that is through completing baseline and end of pilot surveys with stakeholders. And then lastly, just want to go through some of the last steps that we've already kind of talked through with ORCA and fire departments and other stakeholders. So of course, continued strategizing and planning around trying to really increase and support access to the safest resources available, developing and strengthening shared data collection and progress tracking methods among all of our stakeholders, exploring options for site safety planning with the camp communities with the fire department. So looking at how camps are structured to promote fire safety, ensuring that local fire departments are aware of exactly the brands of equipment that are being distributed through this pilot. And that was something we talked about specifically with the fire officials to make sure that their staff are the best prepared they can be to respond to any emergencies that might arise at these sites. And then also a lot of interest in collaborating with the fire departments and vice versa on improving and increasing on-site education and skills training for people that are living at these camps. So I'll ask here if Jeff, if you have anything to add, but from there, I think we can open up for questions and discussion.
Thanks, Ty. No, nothing else to add from me at this point.
Thank you. And Ty, can we stop sharing the screen that way? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, questions? Comments? Jim?
Thank you. First, I wanted to just ask the council a procedural question, because I realized that the majority of this board sitting here is also on the ORCA board, and I'm the chair. And I just wanted to at least disclose that Joan and Carolina serve with me on that board and check in with everyone. I think it feels okay to continue with the conversation, but I just thought it would be good to disclose for the record at a minimum. Carolyn? Oh, sorry, I'm not calling on you.
Jim, I'm glad you brought it up, but I feel like we can only recommend to our councils action on this, and it will be up to the individual jurisdictions to do this. So I feel like we don't have a bad conflict of interest problem here. If anybody else disagrees, let me know, but I think we're okay.
It would be a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners though, right? Just so I'm tracking the right thing. Okay. So then Carolina, I also wanted to add, I'm supportive of this in concept, and it feels like a strong need. I like to hear from staff around if it's successful, if we're starting to have an idea about ongoing funding source, because it's a big emergency ask. And then Ty, if you could just, for the benefit of us and the public, talk a little bit about the main differences between this and the scattered site pilot that we completed earlier this year.
Yeah, I can start with that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up that question. Thank you, Jim. There's some pretty significant differences between this and the scattered site pilot project. And I would say that one of the main differences and one of the reasons why I think we're really more optimistic about this pilot too, is because it is so targeted on a specific outcome and issue at camps, whereas the scattered site project was really let's tackle everything with these unsanctioned camp communities at one time without a lot of very clear, measures for outcomes and exactly what we were looking for. Whereas with this project, it's really very focused on specifically addressing hazardous and fire smoke concerns at sites, and all of the strategies, everything that's a part of this proposal is targeted at that. So I think that's one big difference. And then also just the amount of work and planning that has gone into developing this and really working with the stakeholders ahead of time to make sure that we're on the same page about what are the issues, what are we looking at, what are the strategies we're going to use, and making sure that everybody's supportive of those going into it. And so I think we're all really going into this with a clear idea of what we're trying and how we're going to see if it's successful there too. One thing that I would say is maybe a more negative difference for this would be that we don't have case management support. We don't have case managers as a part of this team. These staff, on one hand, that's I think going to really support the outcomes of this pilot, because those staff are going to be focused 100% on working on these issues with these camp communities. So I think that's good for the outcomes of this, but they're not going to be providing intensive case management services for folks, which was something that was a part of the scattered site project that I think was a really more successful part of that project too. Keely, I don't know if you have other thoughts on that, but those were the first things that came to mind to me. Yeah.
I think that you highlighting the differences is great. I think you would know more than anyone else. And I think what's really important also to note is that in 2020 and 2021, we had unprecedented amounts of funding going towards outreach efforts. So we had Partners in Prevention Education was out in every camp. Navigation team with Interfaith Works was out in the camps. And then we had the scattered site pilot project. Now we do not have the scattered site pilot project. PIPE is not doing outreach at that level, and Interfaith Works Nav team is in-house and not going downtown or out into the encampments any longer. So actually outreach has significantly decreased. There's only one entity that's going out into camps, and they're not connected to our homeless crisis response system. They're adjacent. That's the host team through Olympic Health and Recovery Services, and they're fabulous and great, and we love them. But they're not reporting into the same. They've got a different mission. They've got a very similar but different mission, and they're going to all the camps, but it's just one team meeting individuals in those encampments. So just to paint a picture of where we're at with regards to outreach generally.
And I'll jump in and try to answer the resource question a little bit with, we're not sure. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns around resources. So I think looking forward is challenging. We do expect some reductions, as I've talked about, around some of our local funds. We do have the home fund that brings some new resources that can also be used. A portion of that can be used for services. We don't know what the state budget is going to look like this year. So I think that's where our big unknown is around the state budget. So so kind of the non-answer answer is the funding future in the next couple of years is still a little murky.
Thank you all for that. And I'll just add then to my thoughts that, Keely's comments made it way more emergent for me, and I'm less worried about the ongoing funding. It sounds like this is the right thing to do right now, and we continue that conversation about how to provide services in an ongoing way. So thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
I have one, Carolina. Yeah, just to remind myself, and so the funds for this now, what is being asked for is coming out of what we're calling emergency funds.
That is correct. That would be the $200,000 of local document recording fee that the RHC set aside last spring is what is available to support this. If the RHC so determines to support it, that's where the funds would come from.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. It's hard to remember last spring.
Could you add with that fund, because before I spoke with staff, I was under the impression that those funds were reserved for cold weather shelters and heat emergencies, but can you actually tell us kind of what that emergency fund is used for, or what we used it for last year?
Yeah, thank you. So these emergency funds are really intended for unanticipated needs from when the RFP was issued last February and funding decisions were made in May. So it's not to add funding to an existing project because someone didn't get as much funding as they would have liked. So it was really for unanticipated, unknown, new emergency needs, however you'd like to phrase it, that was set aside to allow the Regional Housing Council to have that flexibility if an opportunity, an emergent issue came up between funding cycles, that you would have access to a modest pot of money that you could access for to address those urgent needs that were unanticipated at the time the last round of funding decisions were made.
Thank you. And Darian, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question. If the RHC sets it aside for the emergency use, does it still need to go back to the jurisdictions to allocate it, or is that an RHC decision to allocate it?
So it would go, the RHC would make that recommendation, and that recommendation would go to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval.
Not back
So we
to
can-
just the board. Okay.
Yep, just the board. So we can issue contracts.
A motion.
Any further questions, comments? I guess either Carolyn or Andy from Lacey.
No, I don't have any comments. I'm supportive.
Yeah, I'm in support too. And just for good of the order, I've asked Andy to kind of take over as Lacey lead because I don't want to, I feel like I could infect you through the screen here. So I'm just not going to do that.
We understand. Take it easy, Carolyn.
Lay down.
Thanks.
Yes.
So
Do you want me to make a motion, Caroline? Okay. Tom, how do you want me to address the range? Do you want me to say up to, and you guys can work on it in contracting?
Yeah, as specific as you can make it for a funding, a dollar amount would be appreciated.
Okay. So I move that the Regional Housing Council approve the OLIMAP Orca proposal up to $111,469 and refer it to the county commissioners for a final decision.
I'll second it.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, not everyone in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone against, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Ty, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Dan, for coming here and preparing all of that. Okay, with that, we will move on. And then, oh, Jeff, go ahead. Sorry, did you want to say?
Oh, I'm just waving goodbye and want to say thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And so then this will come in front of the board later on, and we'll go from there. Okay, next is the RHC advisory boards, and Keely, Jacinda, and Darian. Handing it to you.
Excellent. Can't get rid of me. I'm back. All right, I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. Please be patient. Thank you for your patience. All right, we have a presentation for you. If you can see, there is a lovely logo there hanging out, just waiting for your eyes to feast on it. So we are here to talk to you about the process that we'd like to propose moving forward in setting up these 2 advisory boards for the Regional Housing Council. We have so many things to talk about, so I'll go as swiftly as I can, but be as thorough as I can in my first part of this presentation I'll be taking. So, all right. So before we talk about the process, I just wanted to let you know that we did send out a survey, an interest survey to the Housing Action Team members, as well as to a number of other groups that have more direct frontline service staff. So that would be the Greater Regional Outreach Workers League, or GROW, and the direct service providers through the name-by-name case consultation weekly meeting. And so these, this survey was just kind of to gauge, like, where are people out? Is this something that folks want to participate in? Are they hesitant? Are they resistant? Do they have, concerns? Do they want to be do they want to participate? That sort of thing. So the questions you can see there on the left side or the right side, if it's reversed, the survey questions. And I will show you the results. So it's a little small, so I'll read them out to you. This is actually about the time commitment. So we wanted to gauge where people were at with regards to what the expectations would be for participating as an advisory board member. So we highlighted if they're just a regular member, it'd be 1 90-minute advisory board meeting per month. However, if they were the chair or the vice chair serving as the RHC member ex officio, there would be extra requirements around attending the 2 Regional Housing Council meetings per month. And as you can see, the respondents, there were 30 respondents all told. And out of the 30 respondents, nearly 90% said, yes, that seems very reasonable. We also highlighted that during the annually, there would be an RFP process, which would increase the expected time commitment to about 8 to 10 hours for that month. This is, we reversed these slides a little bit, actually, so I'm going to go back so I can explain that one. So just general interest, are you, oh, wait, no, we copied the wrong, we copied this one twice. So I will just explain to you that there was a general interest. There was, of the respondents, about 60–80% were very interested in being a member of the advisory board, so applying and becoming a member. And then we asked them, which advisory board would you prefer to sit on? And initially, when we sent it out to the hat, in the first responses, it was predominantly Affordable Housing Advisory Board. But as we sent it out to direct service staff, that increased. But it stayed about, there's an even split on interest and who would like to serve on a board. So this other pie chart up in the corner there, the question was, if you are nominated by your advisory board co-members to serve as the chair or the vice chair of the advisory board, and then therefore the chair acting as the ex officio member of the Regional Housing Council, would you accept that nomination? And as you can see, it's fairly, it's all over the place. There's a lot of maybes, so they're not quite sure what that means, perhaps. Some solid no's, no thank you, and some interest in yes. So pretty good response from our community. And there was also a narrative portion that just had some general comments that weren't, there was not really anything necessarily consistent about the comments. They were pretty all over the place, but interesting nonetheless. All right, so what is our process? So we've been developing applications, which I'm happy to talk a little bit more about if you would like, what they consist of, et cetera. But really just want to highlight our timeline, as it's very tight and really important that we meet it. So our applications will be online and they will be live on the RHC website on January 3rd, 2023, after the holiday break. We'll broadly distribute these, the applications through all sorts of listservs to make sure it's hitting a broad audience. And then we will expect those applications to be turned in by January 23rd. So a 3-week turnaround or so. We will then review and score. We, being the technical team, will review those applications. There are some administrative criteria, such as either living within Thurston County or working in Thurston County in a respective agency that's serving either affordable housing or providing homeless services. So that's a criteria that would be a yes or a no. And if they could not meet that criteria, then we might, we wouldn't be able to move them forward. But we will review and score the applications, and then we will make the recommendations to you on February 15th, if we change the meeting date as it is currently in the calendar. So what we are recommending in order to meet the request from the RHC members to some interviews, we would have to push the RHC meeting, the first one, out a week. So we would have time to put it to have those interviews. And those 2 days would be February 8th and February 10th. So if we're going to have RHC members participating in those interviews, they would have to clear their calendars now for 2 half days of interviews on February 8th and 10th, or through the 10th. After those interviews, we will finalize the recommendations to the board or to the Regional Housing Council. If approved by you, the Regional Housing Council, they will be moved forward for final approval at the Board of County Commissioners February 21st board meeting. As soon as they are approved, if they are, the members will be contacted and onboarding and training will begin, which we will get to further on in this presentation. Oh, and so that would be you, Jacinda.
Yeah, so staff put in quite a bit of time, not just Keely and Darian and I, but also Alex and Jessica in the county's office, thinking about and working on onboarding and training, and really thinking about both the reality that this will be happening kind of very swiftly in a somewhat short time frame, but also trying to make sure that we are kind of protecting those that are engaging on the board, that they feel that that is a safe place to engage and to share their thoughts and their opinions and participate. And that everything is just very, very clear from the get-go what is expected. So there again, Keely had mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, in terms of onboarding, or excuse me, in terms of the process, that 8 to 10 hour for RFP reviews, when those come up, but there's also a significant amount of time that will be dedicated, staff time and whoever is selected to serve on these boards for onboarding and training. So some of the training, and we came up with this list by looking at, what is the county doing? What is the city doing? What are some best practices? What are things that other boards that we're aware of had some issues with and we want to avoid? I'm thinking about, having those subject matter experts with a lived experience, and again, making sure that they feel like this is a safe place. So training, some cybersecurity, anti-harassment and discrimination, and making sure that everyone is aware of the Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act. In terms of policies, we've been working on a technology policy, public disclosure policies, standards of conduct and rules of engagement, ethics and conflict of interest, violence prevention, records management, an anti-harassment and discrimination policy. Some of these policies and some of these trainings have specific forms that they'll be signed. So yes, I have read these policies. Yes, I do understand this is a code of conduct or the rules of engagement. Yes, I will uphold them and respect my fellow board members and all I interact with. And then we also wanted to make sure that, again, because this is all moving very quickly and we're moving right into the request for proposals in this new year that the county puts out, and reviewing those and making funding recommendations, that those that serve on both boards are just fully aware of kind of all the multiple documents that kind of overlap the Regional Housing Council work. So the interlocal agreement, the advisory board's charter, permanent supportive housing framework, the homeless crisis response plan, as well as providing a summary of funding sources and uses. So they have something very specific to their board. So they know what funding sources they'll be looking at, what those sources can be used for. Those things will again be explained during the RFP recommendation process, but it's nice for board members to have something to refer back to. The Regional Housing Council structure. And then we also wanted to, which is this last one, addressing white supremacy culture, is something that the HAT regularly does at each of our monthly meetings. And it's been a real good kind of way to pause and think about some of the things that we do without sometimes thinking about why we do them or the impacts. So staff thought it was very important to kind of incorporate that into these boards as well, especially knowing that we are very purposeful in making sure that subject matter experts and those with lived experiences will be serving on the board. And again, making sure it's a safe place and everyone feels, not just for them, but every board member. So quite a bit of onboarding and training to occur in the next month or two after the board members are chosen and appointed.
All right, thanks, Jacinda. I just want to touch on stipends. I know that was a priority for the RHC for the board members to receive stipends, and we have decided for that to be processed through the City of Olympia. Currently, all of our advisory boards receive stipends, so we have a system that is set up for that. There are some steps that we'll need to take in order for that to be smooth. We need to have a W-9, so we just want to make sure that that's clear for folks. Right now, we have it set up where it's $50 per meeting, and so we want to make sure that's clear for folks who will be serving in the chair role, sitting on the ex officio position at the RHC, that it is the $50 per meeting, and that our proposal is that these funds would come out of the home fund admin set aside. And so we have all of the documents prepped. We pulled them from the City of Olympia's administrative processes already to have those set up and to be RHC specific. And so folks would sign up for that stipend as they enter into during the board member onboarding. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so here's just a quick overview of the roles and responsibilities. The documents that go along with these are pretty substantial, but I know that these are things that we've talked about in previous meetings regarding the board, so I just want to highlight those. We want to make it clear about the expectations and that this is a knowledge-based board, and we don't want it to necessarily be about the title that you hold outside the board or how high up you are in your organization, but it's a knowledge sharing space, and we're really excited to value people's expertise on both boards to make sure that we're able to make a positive impact in our community. And we're just really relying on people to collaborate with subject matter experts in the board, and also want to be supportive if there isn't a subject matter expert, maybe for a specific funding source or a target demographic, the board is willing and supportive to bring outside people in to serve on maybe subcommittees or to advise other recommendations, just like a good knowledge sharing space for people to be able to share and make positive recommendations. So we're trying to set that tone from the start. I know the conflict of interest was brought up, and so we've already outlined that no two people from the same organization may sit on the same board. It can be on opposite boards, one on each board, but no two from the same organization to kind of mitigate that. And then there is an agreement to be mindful of conflict of interest or to remove yourself during a funding recommendation if your organization is involved, and that document is in the onboarding process. And as far as meeting specifics, we want the board to kind of drive that. If it's going to be virtual or hybrid or in person, these will be monthly meetings, and we're trying our best to standardize the board process a bit better. Currently, the home fund board that sits in the City of Olympia We do staff reports and agendas and minutes, and those are posted. And then it does look like a committee, like a council committee. And so we're hoping to standardize that process a bit more for documentation purposes, records keeping, decisions that come out of the board. They're clear and documented and have backup documentation and staff reports. So those templates have been created, and we're going to incorporate those into the board process as well. Next slide. All right, and then the work plan, as a team has said, we're going to hit the ground running after we get this up and going. So we're hoping to elect a chair and vice chair right off the bat. And again, those positions are the ones who would be serving as the non-voting members of the RHC. And then following that, we'll conduct elections every November. So this would be a shorter stint, but we still want to incorporate that process in, and potentially those people would rerun, or who knows, but electing chairs and vice chairs immediately, and then starting that cyclical process and holding the elections in November. The RFP review, so that needs to happen pretty immediately for the homeless services, the homeless services board, and to review those applications. But and then right after will be the home fund application, but those are going to be two different RFP processes, because we need to keep the home award in alignment with the consolidated plan. So there'll be an RFP process, and then there'll be a second one in midsummer after the home fund RFP process is incorporated. So two separate ones for the affordable housing board after it is created. And then hopefully once those are completed, we'll work right into a work plan. We're excited to make sure that these boards have structure and goals and a timeline throughout their time that they serve, that they know what things are coming up, what priorities are there, what we need to incorporate into the board process. So that work plan will be worked on right after that second RFP process is complete. Yes, I think that's the last slide.
So Dana, may I jump in just very quickly, just to clarify on the RFP timeline, excuse me, only in this first year, the home fund RFP will be separate than the other capital funding sources. So that's, the HUD Home 2060, the typical funding sources that the county runs through our annual RFP. And that's just because of timing. Again, the HUD sources need to stay on that earlier time frame because we're working on our consolidated plan with HUD. And then the home fund, I think we just got our ILA. We finally gotten some good progress on the ILA, and that was obviously needed before we could move into an RFP process with that. So just want to be very clear that it's not our intent for the home or for the Affordable Housing Board to have two RFP processes annually, just for right now in this first year.
Thanks, Jacinda.
Thank you. Kelly, could you let Joan in? She has her hand raised in the activities list.
Yes, just one moment.
Thank you. Okay, with that, any questions? Jim?
Yeah, thank you. My goodness, what an ambitious schedule, and I can't even believe that you're willing to take it on for the team. And I just want to give you a huge gratitude, because to be able to put this out and commit to doing it with how much is on all of your plates I see that as a significant lift. And so I just wanted to say that, and then ask a question. So in the conflict of interest section, you talk about not having two people from the same organization on the same board. In the stipend section, you talk about paying people. And so I'm curious, will people be appointed to represent an agency, or will it be individuals and they only have a conflict if they're looking at funding for their agency or some other conflict that might come up?
People will apply individually, and we will just take their daytime job into consideration when we are appointing board members. So if two people from the same organization apply, then we'll have to make that decision on which single person will serve on that board. So it's not two of the same people from that organization.
And then, but then with a stipend, so do you have a way to screen if people are being paid to be there, or is that not worth it for the amount of money we're talking about if they're all nonprofit employees? Do you have a thought on that?
I'm not tracking the stipend piece. Anyone that opts into receiving the stipend for their service on the board will receive it.
Right, but if I work for the Family Support Center and I'm there on their dime, do I get the stipend too?
Yes, it is solely opt-in. Oh yeah, regardless on if you're there on their dime or not, this is.
Okay, so that would be like jury duty and up to the agency to have a conversation in their personnel policies about other compensation while you're on the clock.
Sure,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes, this is, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And then I just wanted to also make a comment, and I think it's for the next agenda item, but related to this, I think it's important that people know that the city of Olympia is taking on the risk and liability for managing 24 new volunteers. And so I think there needs to be a nod and since we're opening it in the interlocal agreement that allows for the RHC from time to time to assign operational tasks to other partners than the lead agency. So I just want to say that because right now I see this as Thurston County's role 100%. That's what the ILA says. So and I'm fine that this is operationally necessary right now, but since we're going to open the ILA, I think it would be good to just clarify that sometimes certain tasks might move around based on who has time and resources or whatever the right language is for that. So, but otherwise I'm supportive. So thank you.
Steve Jones.
Thank you for letting me back in. I didn't know why I disappeared all of a sudden. And anyway, I'd like to go back and just ask a couple questions about the stipend issue. I'm just wondering, is Olympia the only one who offers this on their committees or commissions at this point, as far as the 3 cities and also in the county are concerned?
We're the
Yeah.
only ones in the state.
Pardon?
We're the only ones in the state that offer stipends to all advisory committee members.
Yeah, there's several planning commissions around the state that do it, but we're the only ones that do all. But I think the county's paying the lived experience group, so I'm not sure. I thought they were.
So this was an issue that came up at our council, right, in the past few months, and we had no space to get in some conversation time with the whole council on this, and we still have questions about it. And so we have questions about it, and we have questions about it here. And just in light of also what Jim asked, if I'm a paid employee of somebody and I'm sitting on this board and I'm also getting paid, it's presented some things that we as Tumwater want to talk about. And we also want to say, and you answered part of the question, that around the state or even out of the state have other, boards and commissions done this? And what is the data on it? And what difference does it make? Is it really, what is our goal, which is to get more and a broader, array of people or under our, diversity program and that kind of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because we're not wholeheartedly there at this point.
Did you have a follow-up to that, Mayor Ryder?
Yeah, I just want to talk to this issue. So I'm heavily involved in the National League of Cities and their Race, Equity, and Leadership Council. And we are seeing more and more cities across the United States do exactly what Olympia does because it is an equity issue. And so I just want to applaud the city of Olympia for doing this. I had some reservations about it as well, but as I've had more conversations along the lines of equity and who is able to represent us on these boards and commissions, I fully support giving the opportunity for someone to participate who doesn't necessarily might not have the means to participate if it wasn't for the $50 stipend, to be able to pay for childcare or what other things as well. So I just want to applaud the city of Olympia for taking this step.
And I do believe, thank you for that, Andy. I believe that we understand that, and I certainly understand that. But these boards and commissions are pretty heavily, I understand who should receive it. I don't think that everybody should, we're not saying, we're concerned about everybody doing that. I mean, should people who work for nonprofits, the people who've already been on these boards all this time, I understand what we want to do, and I'm all for that. So is Tumwater. Recruit people who couldn't afford the time or the childcare or all of those things, understood. But I guess the question comes, everybody?
Yeah.
Anybody and everybody. I think that's where we are. And in no way are we saying this in kind of a critical kind of way. We just haven't talked about it.
So my two cents on that, sorry, is that we have no idea what someone's personal finances may or may not be. And I think we should have a little bit of faith in people to make the right decisions when it comes to this issue, right? If they are opting in, maybe they need that extra $50. Maybe it is the difference between them making it. And let's have a little faith in people as well, which is what we're trying to do across this region, is have faith in people.
Are you planning to do it in your city, Andy?
I am. I will be bringing it up. Well, it's going through its own process through our commission on equity. So we'll wait to hear what the recommendation is.
Yeah.
But you know where I stand.
Yeah.
Okay, Keely, and then I'll get Jim and then Darian.
Yes, really quickly, I just wanted to clarify that the Lived Experience Steering Committee, those members, so the consultants that were awarded that grant built a line item into their budget to be providing stipends. So the county isn't directly providing stipends to the Lived Experience Steering Committee, just FYI. However, they are very excited. They have been, they've looked at the application. They're giving me feedback. They want to apply. They want to participate. They're incredibly engaged and would be a really valuable part of it, either of the advisory boards, and they will not be able to participate without a stipend. And since that is kind of the nexus of where we got to with the Regional Housing Council's retreat, that we want subject matter experts and people with lived experience on these boards, I think that is why we've highlighted them in their own separate slide.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to put that out and just say, Tumwater's not behind in wanting to do something like this. We're behind in having had the discussions, and as the Tumwater representative, I just wanted to say that we in no way want to hold things up, but we do have a question about this. So that was the purpose. I appreciate everybody's input and conversation around it. Thank you, really do.
Carolina, I think you called on me, but I didn't hear any words. I just saw your mouth move.
Yeah, can you hear me all right? Yeah.
You faded down to almost nothing. So I'll ask my question while you do it. So I'll just add my comment. So to Mayor Ryder's point, and I'm assuming this is why Darian's raising their hand, is that we have a lot of people that don't take our stipend, and especially in our home fund advisory committee, where those are largely professionals working in this space, they aren't utilizing it. And so I think that faith in humanity manifested, I guess, in our first year of doing this kind of business. So.
Exactly, yeah, just a data point, 3 out of 10 of the board members opted in this last year. So it's open to everyone, but I think that the acknowledgement that it's to give people a boost and people opt in, with their own agency is the goal, and that was seen in our board.
Okay, Danny?
Yeah, I wanted to speak real quick to the, what if somebody is like on the clock with a nonprofit and opts to receive the stipend? What Jim was talking about is it would be up to the policy of that organization as to what they would allow their employee to do. And I see for one, they could just say, you're not allowed to accept a stipend if you're on the clock with us. They could also, nonprofit organizations are grant funded. They could say, okay, great, that's how we'll pay for that time. The nonprofit gets it, and then they can benefit, and then the nonprofit isn't funding the employee to participate in the process. And they could also say, all right, which one of our employees is a good fit for this leadership opportunity, and it could be like kind of an employee benefit to taking on a leadership opportunity in the community. So I think there's different ways that the different organizations could work it out, but I think that could come about in ways that are really, really beneficial. And I also just want to say that I like the logo. Good work. We talked about that 2 years ago, and there it is. It looks nice.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, I guess I'll throw something out there, but kind of separate from this. And I had a comment just in regards of the trainings. I thought the trainings and the documents were pretty good, but I was wondering, I saw for the documents, we talked about, the white supremacist guidelines, but maybe a training in implicit bias, or I think it's always good to have just some sort of training right at the beginning in regards to implicit bias or unconscious bias, just to kind of start off with, especially when you're bringing a diverse group of folks in, just to kind of have that good starting point. And then I see 3 hands up, Keely, then Tom, then Ramiro.
Great. I just wanted to contextualize the applications and some of the ways that we're scoring, and with the intent of meeting honoring the intent that came from the retreat in centering subject matter experts as well as people with lived expertise, lived experience. That we know that many people will apply, they'll have a lot of passion and maybe have 30 years of experience being an executive director or what have you, but we also want it to be accessible for people who have direct experience and for people who are have identities that are overrepresented within the homeless crisis response system. So those will become administrative scores. If they have direct experience as a frontline staff, will be an administrative score, meaning a bonus, number of points, as well as belonging to an identity group, which is overrepresented in the homeless crisis response system, which is a voluntary in the application. It will be optional for them to identify themselves by race, by gender identity, sexual orientation, as well as disability. So that is how we would know that information, but it will be optional, but we really want a diverse board. We want new voices, old voices. We want really experienced people who've been in it and people who have lived in it and access services. So really trying to honor that and staying really true to that in this process.
Thank you, Tom.
Perhaps changing gears a little bit to highlight some of the discussion around the interviews. And so we heard at the last meeting there was an interest in doing the interviews for the applicants. And so wanted to ask the explicit question, that we set aside a couple days to do those interviews, want to confirm that people are interested in doing that, but also I think we need a commitment, who is going to participate on those interview panels, and to make sure that, confirm that this group wants to move forward with those interviews and who wants to participate in that interview process. So kind of a question for that group, I want to make sure we touch on.
Thanks, Tom. And just to add to that is that we want to put those interview dates on the application so people know ahead of time to plan and to say, set aside this date. Because if you apply and you are chosen, you will be interviewed on this date. And we have those few days, it's like February 8th, 9th, and 10th, in order to keep the schedule moving. On those is when we would need to interview. And so we were thinking about doing 2 half days, 1 half day for each board, and just 15-minute interviews, a chance for leadership from the RHC to meet folks, ask a couple questions, and then we'd move along. So yeah, who's going to interview if that's something we want to do, and if we think that that process fits the request.
Okay, so there's a question up. Jim, is that you volunteering?
Yeah, I think Romero's before me, but I can make myself free those days. If the chair and vice chair are free, that would be ideal, but I think then from there we go to the next layer. But I also want to say, if, you know, based on all the comments Keely made, it would be important to have one set of those interviews in the evening. And then you have to set a schedule based on all the people we appoint, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Ramiro?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a question related to the applications and the technical team that is going to maybe making recommendations to the RHC. I'm just wondering if the intent is to bring all the applications to the RHC, and then within that context will be who are the recommendations, who are not. If that is not intent, I strongly encourage you that would be the case, because I believe the RHC would like to see all the applications, and obviously within that context, the technical team should provide the recommendations as to why.
Ramiro, you're cutting off.
That would be my recommendation if that is not the case.
Or was that just me? Did he just cut off on my end? No. Okay, you cut off a little bit there.
I'm sorry, my connection has been a little bit off. Can you hear me? How about if I turn my video off? Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
So the question that I had, and maybe a suggestion if it's not the case, is related to the recommendations of the technical team related to the applications when they, my recommendation, if that is not the case, is to bring all the applications to the RHC, and within the list of all the applications will be the recommendations the technical team is submitting to the RHC. I think that will probably bring transparency to the whole process. And I believe the RHC deserves the opportunity to see all the applications, obviously with the recommendations from the technical team within.
I just have a really quick question following up on that. If like the one criteria that feels like a yes or no is if somebody who applies who does not live in Thurston County and does not work in Thurston County. I don't know why somebody would apply, but they may, that are fitting those criteria. Would it be acceptable to the RHC for that criteria if it is not met to be excluded, or would all applications?
Yeah, I would say just forward qualified, you know, if there's only a couple qualifications, then.
Yeah. Okay, so far it looks like the recommendation to the initial question was for the chair and the vice chair to participate, and that might change next year, right? Not sure who the chair or the vice chair is going to be, or if we're going to keep it the same. So but to be available the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th for 2 half-day and maybe 1 evening meeting. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, and based on what you just said, Carolina, we should probably just pick the 2 people for this and have it be separate from if there's any officer switch. That way people can have it held on their calendar.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like thinking, wait, we do have.
Yeah, because that's annual in January, right?
Yeah. So who is available for the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th? And would like to be a part of these interviews? Everyone don't jump on at once. I can make myself available for those days.
What was the timing again?
The 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, and it's 2 half-day meetings and 1 evening meeting.
Someone might need to check with Carolyn. Obviously, she's not feeling well, so might need to check in with her.
I'm on the call. Have you set a time? Are they going to be morning or afternoon meetings?
No time has been set yet.
Okay. I have fair availability, but I will make it a priority.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can be the backup to that, or yeah, unless someone else wants to.
Okay.
It'd be probably good to have it on 3 of our calendars so we have an alternate.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So with that, do you need any other direction for this conversation?
The only other soft ask was that if the boards are looking to meet in person, if there were locations, public meeting spaces between all the jurisdictions that could maybe switch in between or could be a good place for people to meet. We don't need to know that now, of course, but just to be thinking of a spot that we could offer if folks wanted to do in-person meetings.
I mean, we got new digs, so.
Well, I think it's important to think about what places have good accessibility for a hybrid meeting, because so far the Orca meeting's the only one I've been to that feels right to me, because we have an owl that turns around in the room and zooms in on people's faces. Unless you have a camera in front of you, it's not a good experience for the people that attend remotely. So just think about that when you try and figure out the schedule.
That was a direct call out from the survey as well. That was one direct request for the boards to be hybrid.
We're not that far advanced in technology quite yet, so. I think you can see.
Jump in and say slightly related to that. We have asked our legal counsel for an opinion on whether these meetings are, the advisory boards are officially subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. We believe the intent is, we intend to meet the intent, but we are just waiting to hear back from our lawyer. She was going to check with kind of our expert. So just getting a formal ruling on that. So don't have that official answer yet on whether these boards would be subject to that act, but the intent is to act as if they are and to make them public. And so if they are, one of the things we'd incorporate in the charter is the standard meeting time set, third Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock or whatever that is, so that we would not have to, just for notification, for noticing purposes.
Jamie?
I just wanted to note that, wherever the meeting is hosted, whatever jurisdiction is doing the hosting will bear some administrative burden around that in terms of somebody to make sure the tech is working and to make sure the doors are unlocked, et cetera. So just wanted to name that.
Okay. Jacinda?
Elena, thank you. Another very soft ask before we move on. Much of what Jane and Keely and I and other staff have prepared have that lovely logo that Megan Porter worked on. If there's any heartburn over that, it would be nice to hear that now, because we do want to standardize our materials and make sure it's very clear that this is a regional housing council boards not any individual jurisdiction. So right now that logo is on several items, and if anyone specifically does not like it and wants to replace it, it would be nice to know now.
Oh, I don't see anyone raising their hand, so I think we're good, Jacinda.
I love it.
I think it looks really nice. So. Okay, so thank you all. Thank you, RHC. That was a very good conversation and we hit different points. So next we'll move on to possible rapid capital acquisition project. And Jacinda, this goes to you.
All right. Tom or Keely, are you able to pull up? Sorry, I had it pulled up and I'm distracted by the kiddo. So while we're doing that, just want to give a very brief background and reminder that Rapid Capital Housing Acquisition, this is a state funding source. This group heard a little bit about that earlier this summer. When we were also having conversations about the right-of-way initiative. And at that time, there just wasn't a project that really aligned to move forward. So the second round of this funding source has been released. And that application is out now. And there is still a 7.9 million set aside for Thurston Mason counties. So that very geographic specific amount still stands in this round. A reminder that a project must benefit extremely low income sheltered or unsheltered homeless individuals or households. Application date is January 12 of 2023, so that's very close. And eligible projects must have a local commitment of at least 5% of the project costs. And I will note that we have heard from the state that this is very likely to be the last round of rapid capital housing acquisition funding, and that any that is unclaimed at this point is likely to go to different NOVA processes or statewide projects if not awarded. So it is very much looking like this may be our last chance to try to capture 7.9 million for our region. Again, so the funds can be used to acquire property for rapid conversion. Rapid is defined approximately, I believe it's within 6 months. For enhanced emergency shelters, permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, permanent housing, or youth housing. City of Olympia, Darian and I have been working and in communication with a potential developer that is interested in a project located in Tumwater. Again, trying to share with you all a little bit about this opportunity without getting too specific. So the last time this property was appraised, it was around a 4.4 million price, and does not appear to need any major updates or major rehab in a near time frame. Staff has done a walkthrough of that, and again, are working with a developer who has taken on rehab projects in the past. So again, the nature of stuff that developers in close communication with staff, but they are still doing their due diligence, both on the property and just making sure this is a good fit, that funding source. So that is why, that we're sharing as much as we can, but also don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Again, the just a reminder with this funding source that that partner agency would be the one being the applicant, so not the Regional Housing Council. We're just working to help facilitate grabbing that 7.9 million. The project would need, again, a 5% match to be competitive. That would be approximately 250,000. So today, the intent of our, our presentation here today is to let you all know that there is a project we are looking at. There is a developer that we're in communication with. The due diligence process is moving forward. It would require a 5% match. That application is due in January. And to start having, to have that discussion of where could that match come from if the project does indeed move forward, knowing that that application would be due before the next Regional Housing Council meeting. And staff has listed some potential funding sources for that 5%. But again, the ask is, is this something that the Regional Housing Council is still interested in pursuing that funding? And if so, where might that match come from? And just being able to confidently tell that developer that yes, there will be a match should things work out as we hope they will. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Any questions? Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that in our conversations with the developer that we ensure that somewhere in the project budget, there would be a tenant relocation fund if there's anyone already in the units. And then I guess I'll just see what Tumwater thinks of the idea of shifting around their ARPA a little bit to make this go.
We've already had that discussion, Jim. Tumwater,
And you're in support of it?
yes. Everybody always says it's about time Tumwater has something in our city. It's a great.
Well, I think that's a huge and generous contribution for a city your size already, and to be flexible with it, thank you for all of that.
Well, thank you, but yeah, we're supportive. We're gonna work hard on it.
So just to make sure that we're clear that we are going to be the ARPA money that Tumwater is looking at for this. We'd be diverting some of it from the Franz Anderson project to fund this project, right? Because you still only have the same amount of ARPA funds.
Can you guys please get shoes on as soon as I'm done? We'll leave.
Yeah,
I can take over.
I'll just chime in and clarify. Yeah, we have about 550,000 of ARPA funds for a regional housing project. And so what this would do is pull about half of those away from Franz Anderson and put it towards this. And, if this project comes to fruition, great, makes it happen. If it doesn't, then we'll come back and talk about where that 275 lands. But yeah, we keep the other 275 in Franz Anderson.
My only question is why don't we look at $1,406 for this 250,000? And then make sure that the other project goes forward with as much local match as possible.
Jump in and try to answer that partially just from a timing. It's faster for City of Tumwater with their ARPA funds because there needs to be some level of commitment for this application that goes in January 12th or so, mid-January. The 1406 does require each jurisdiction's council to weigh in. And with the end of the year, we just felt that if Tumwater is able to kind of put in their ARPA, that's the most efficient, fastest way to kind of make that commitment, where the 1406, because it requires going to each jurisdiction's council to weigh in, just seemed from a timing point of view would take a little bit longer. Long-term, certainly 1406 could be a potential source of funds, but just from an immediate need to make a level of commitment to this project, the 1406 is a little more time consuming, needing to go to each council.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Just to say that I definitely think we should go after every single penny we possibly can to get more permanent supportive housing in our region. And I appreciate Tumwater's role in this and staff's role to see how we can maximize our dollars. And so I mean this is just going into the pipeline that we all know we desperately need. So I support it 100%.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, Jacinda and Darian, for hustling something up, because it's a big lift too, because you found a project and a developer. So
Yes, thank you both. Okay, with that, Jacinda, do you need?
Was just going to thank you all, as well as let you all know again that because that application will occur before the next Regional Housing Council, Darian and I and staff will kind of keep technical team updated and rely on the staff there to kind of communicate to everyone what's going on with that application, and certainly can update again in February and let you all know what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we're moving straight along to the RHC ILA amendment. And Tom?
All right, thank you. So moving forward with the Regional Housing Council ILA, as was alluded to earlier, I know the Board of County Commissioners yesterday approved an interlocal agreement between the county and the City of Olympia to combine their home funds. I don't know if City of Olympia has taken official action. Yes, wonderful. So that is moving forward. One of the things that ILA requires is that the Regional Housing Council amend its ILA within 90 days to incorporate these advisory boards in that home fund. So really want to move forward with amending the Regional Housing Council ILA to incorporate these advisory boards in the home fund. So in your packet is an updated version of the ILA with some track changes. So I will share my screen again here and just talk through what those changes are to the ILA. And I think Councilmember Cooper raised a good point earlier around the stipends. And so that may be something we want to look at, whether there's some additional amendments to the ILA that we want to open up and discuss. So track changes, we won't go through each of these in detail. We added some whereas clauses around the House bills, the legislation that allowed for the home fund, the whereas is around the City of Olympia passing those, and for the county. So some whereas clauses to set the background and the context around the home fund. We then scroll down, adding the home fund under our list of sources under the purpose. Under governance structure, so updating this text to indicate that the chairs of the advisory boards, and Keeling and mentioned this as part of the advisory board discussions, that the chairs of the advisory boards would serve as those ex officio members of the RHC in a non-voting capacity. We removed the technical and communications working team. That didn't seem to be necessary anymore. The communications team is not an active team, and we're the kind of staff to this, but didn't feel we needed to call that out. Indicating the vice chairs of the advisory boards would be the alternates, and then just clarifying that staff of a jurisdiction could not be a chair or vice chair, and then could not be a RHC member jurisdiction. So hopefully that's in alignment with what's been discussed. And then scrolling down, Around funding, we've added just references to the county home fund and the Olympia home fund in a couple applicable places. Incorporating reference to the county and Olympia home fund ILA, incorporating that by reference into the agreement. So once that is executed, we'll include the actual dates of that agreement. And then this is where I would say the most substantial updates are to adding the advisory boards to these working teams. So this was the languages that was important to work out between the city and the county. So establishing the 2 advisory boards, establishing with subject matter experts to make those recommendations to the RHC on funding priorities, funding awards, and policies for RHC consideration as appropriate. That the RHC shall approve a charter that guides the membership, operation, and responsibilities of the board. So we've shared that draft charter with you, so that the charter would really be the operationalization of these boards. Creating the affordable housing advisory boards. And this is where that language is important, indicating that the advisory board is composed of community members, including private sector stakeholders, representing all the areas of Thurston County, and then at least 1/3 of members of this advisory board are comprised of residents of Olympia or represent organizations based in or located in Olympia, because that's the language that is in the county and Olympia ILA, because Olympia's to recognize and reflect Olympia's contribution to with combining the home funds. Then setting up the Homeless Services Advisory Board, listing the fund sources that each board would have, and saying that these recommendations, so we don't have the same language around the membership of the Homeless Services Advisory Board, because there aren't those same limitations. Those are really dictated by what would be in the charter. So that is the new language that is added around establishing the advisory boards. So happy to answer any questions that folks have. I know Councilmember Cooper did bring up that idea around the lead agency. And so thinking about stipends, we can certainly look at whether there's language that's appropriate perhaps to add to this paragraph if that is necessary. So that is a very high level overview of the changes, but hopefully those all are in alignment with what we've been discussing and what folks were expecting to see in amendments to the ILA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Jim, question?
Yeah, Tom, remind me, the home fund won't have to go back through Olympia's council, right? It goes from RHC to the Board of Commissioners.
That is correct.
Okay. And so that I really like the amendments that have been done. And so my comments are about more amendments. The one I suggested already around the lead agency and just allowing for some flexibility there, task by task. And then somewhere in this document, it would be good to list the dates of revision. And the only reason I say that is because in it says we'll reevaluate the lead agency every 5 years, but once we sign this, we won't know when the first year was. So on that one, and then I just think because, I think the fact that Olympia is, putting it all on the table, including like really delegating our entire authority to this body and the county commission, I kind of wonder if we could strike that piece about 1406 that's in 6H under funding, so that it can also be all inclusive here and not have to go back to the local jurisdictions. The complexity around the mayor's question a few minutes ago made me look at that language, and I think that was just there because we weren't sure and we were building trust in the new organization, but maybe there was another legal reason.
So certainly we can add the dates of revision. That's a good suggestion. The other question around 1406, that's a question for members.
Okay, I'll take it back to mine, and to me it seems like a good consideration at least.
Yeah, I mean, sounds good to me.
So how would it work exactly, Jim? You're just taking out coming back each time?
Yeah, so 1406 is the only funding source here that requires going back to the city councils. And so just making it so it's streamlined with all of the same process as the rest of the funding sources.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm willing to go back, have that conversation with Lacey as well.
Okay, so maybe a follow-up item on the next agenda. That way we can all talk to our individual councils and commission. But yeah, sounds good to me. Okay. Oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just sorry, thank you. Just to kind of put a bow on this. So that's great. Happy to get that input. What we would be looking for, because we do have that 90-day time frame in the County Olympia ILA, is our target is to have each council take a vote on the amended ILA no later than March of 2023. So we'd want to, at least have some language finalized or pretty set in stone in January, so that we can kind of then distribute that out to jurisdictions by late January. So you can take that action in February, early March, so we can get this finalized. So I know sometimes ILAs, lawyers get involved in some of the language back and forth can take a little time. So we want to be cognizant that we're on a little bit of a time frame, that we will need to finalize any changes and bring this before councils no later than March to get this approved.
Okay, great. Oh, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add just a little bit of caveat, we'll bring the conversation about the $1,406 back to the respective councils. But with that time frame that we need to adopt the MOU with the representing the Home Fund Advisory Boards, if we have a little bit more robust conversation about the 1406 or other things be brought up to be changed, we want to be considerate of that and timing wise, that we may have to act on the stuff at hand and work on those issues longer term. I just want to put that out there as just awareness.
Thank you.
You already sound like a city manager, man.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. Okay. We'll move on to the next item, which is the row update, and it's Keely.
Yes, I'm back. You're welcome. I have an update. It's not much of an update. I looked to my my team. I call it we are a team. We meet quite regularly about a number of topics. So Darian and Jacinda. Oh, if Jacinda's still here. No, Jacinda's not here. So Darian, it's you and I. So the right of way is moving right along. We have not much is happening with moving people off of the right of ways right now. It's more about kind of maintenance and figuring out how we get people into Unity Commons, as well as how do we get people on a name by name list? How do we keep the encampments clean? How do we monitor that? So a lot of focus on just maintenance, keeping things clean. City of Olympia, I'll let Darian, if you want to give any more information about what you are doing with DOT and Slater Kinney in just 1 second. So you can talk about that one. And then what we are hearing, and I did notice that there were some Safe Place staff members on the call. The Safe Place outreach that has been happening in the right of ways has been overwhelming in terms of like excited response. They've been able to move some folks into actual housing. And also just the number of individuals that are seeking safety from violence in the encampments. And so having the Safe Place outreach person out there, having that hotel program has proved to be incredibly vital. So that has been an interesting and discovery from this whole process. We are still moving people into Unity Commons as those beds become available and as there is interest. And while we wait for the Franz Anderson tiny homes and we wait for the hotel to be online. So lots and nothing happening, but we continue to meet twice a week with our state partners and local partners. And Darian, if you want to talk about Sleater-Kinney.
Yes, as we have been saying and predicted that as we close camps and folks don't take the congregate shelter option, the other encampments will continue to grow. And so we're seeing that at Sleater-Kinney and at Wheeler. And with that, we're just seeing a lot of trash and a lot of dumping. So we have set up weekly cleans at Sleater-Kinney with DOT to just pick up things that are along the right of way that could potentially be a hazard or go into the road. So we're collaborating with them to do some weekly garbage pickups. We are also working with our internal waste team to go to Wheeler and do larger item pickups because there's just been an excess of dumping and trash along Wheeler. So we're trying to do some mitigation of waste and to keep things as clean as we can until the larger cleans happen and clean the site once they'll be transitioned to housing for folks living along the right of way. So we're just trying to do some mitigation, trying to keep some bumpers on the sites and do the best that we can. And as we've talked about, both RFPs for the Tiny Home Village and for the Franz Anderson project will be coming out at the beginning of the new year. So those projects are still moving ahead. Hopefully the Tiny Home Village will be up and going April, May, with the hotel coming online closer to the beginning of the year, and we'll start to have more permanent spots for folks, and those encampments will be closed. But I have, thanks.
And can I jump in and ask Rick to give an update on the Lacey community meeting? I don't think we updated this group on the Lacey community meeting for the hotel.
Could I ask a question first of Keely on this topic?
Sure, go ahead, Joan, and then Rick, I'll pass it to you, okay?
Okay, thanks. Keely, you mentioned that there seems to be more violence. Is it from within the camp, the occupants, or is it outside people creating it?
So what I mean by that is that there have always been people in encampments that are fleeing either domestic violence or assaults or stalking behavior, that kind of thing. And so it's not that there's an increase in it, but rather an increase of an awareness of how prevalent it is within those encampments. So not necessarily an increase in actual violence.
Oh, good. Because I know in a couple of other cities where I have some friends and we talk, some of their encampments have been, getting people outside who don't like them or want them there or something. There's been more violence toward them. And so that's why I was asking.
Yeah, to be honest, in the last couple of years, through the Scatter Site pilot project, we learned that there's actually an awful lot of violence that occurs from presumably housed neighbors towards those living in encampments. We had some portable toilets that were blown up by some homemade bombs, people throwing firecrackers at people, dumping illegally giant items in dumpsters that are reserved for the camps, shooting out windows. I mean, on and on and on. Yes, there's a tremendous amount of violence coming from outside.
Yeah.
And harassment, presumably by those who are housed.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Thank you. Rick?
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, we, with the hotel acquisition out there on Quinault Drive, we coordinated with Lehigh and Thurston County and Olympia on an effort to do some informational forums to the public. We held those forums on November 16th. In preparation of that, we wanted to make sure we got ahead, so we created some flyers with some frequently asked questions that was pretty inclusive of what type of questions we anticipated, and then also outline not only what the right-of-way initiative, where the project was coming from, but also what the enhanced shelter would include in terms of how it'd be operated and managed. So we produced that flyer, and we did some direct phone calls in advance of the public information forms to area business and property owners, so they were aware that it was coming. We also in person dropped by flyers and talked to businesses in the area as well. So on the 16th of Wednesday, we held two sessions, one at 3 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. And with that, we had a general overview of a presentation and then had a panel that included Tom Keeley, Josh Cashel from Lehigh, and Scott Spence, and Nathan Pepin from Commerce. We had a pretty well group of folks representing the partnership in this right-of-way initiative. Both sessions weren't really attended heavily by the general public. We probably had a few more people at the 3 o'clock session and just a couple at the 6 o'clock. But that didn't slow down the question and answer period. So once we got through the formal presentation, it was about 10 or 15 minutes. There was about an hour and a half of questions that really got out all the information that we typically, the questions we hear typically from these type of projects. So a lot of that was conveyed. We also broadcasted both sessions via YouTube and Facebook Live. At the close of the evening, we had about, I believe, around 60 individuals that viewed the online sessions, and then we continue to have people view it after the fact. I don't know what the final total has been, but I know over the next couple of days after the session, we did have continually people watching the videos. Again, I think it was there's a lot of concern and question initially, but as we talked through, I think people walked away satisfied with how the plan going forward and the whys. And so we haven't really heard much feedback since that time. We also, as a result of those forums, had some articles in the local news media, and those articles were generally favorable, and we didn't have any response from those either. So I think it was ultimately became a good event that got information out. Not everybody's necessarily happy, but they understand what the process and where it's coming from. And I think also a key piece of it was with Lehigh's operation, they formed the Community Advisory Council or Community Advisory Group. And Josh Castle mentioned that the information sessions that up to that point, they already had several people inquire about being on it. And within a week and a half of our public sessions, they said they pretty much had a full slate of people interested in participating in the Community Advisory Committee, which is that good neighbor strategy to help people stay informed and in contact with the facility. So overall, I think it was a success. So next steps is finish the acquisition process. We're in the stage of routing the MOU with Thurston County Commerce and City of Lacey for the acquisition piece. And then the next step is working with Lehigh on the operational contract. So it's moving forward fairly good form.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so with that, we have reached the end. And so we are heading to good of the order. Start off with City of Olympia.
Yeah, just one quick thing from us. So we have our council retreat on the 5th and 6th. I think that's right, the first Friday and Saturday of the year. And so wanted to let you know, we'll do our appointment process and may or may not change members. But Danny and I have been talking about this, and if it, I think if it's both of us, we definitely will be needing to not always have 2 council members here. And so I just wanted to maybe throw out there, maybe this is a good discussion for January to talk about whether we need 2 from each city, given that we're moving towards having the advisory committees. And I think we've found a pace. We're reducing the need for extra help for the application and RFP processes. We're just getting a lot more work in our interjurisdictionals, as I know everyone is, and a couple of them have gone to multiple times per month like this. So wanted to just put that on the table, and maybe we can talk about it in January.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Tumwater.
No, we don't have anything specific. I'll just say that that the alternate thing has worked well for us because each of us has the same information and so forth. And especially, I think some of it depends on like what job the lead person has that the other one needs to show up more or something. So just wanted to throw that out. I mean, we're open to that discussion, but I don't have anything current other than we're looking forward to a Christmas break.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, to be clear, I don't think that Jim intended to say like you know, that every jurisdiction would want to do that, but that we might opt to do that, just to save time. There's just so much going on. So that was not a directive for others to consider.
So, okay, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
Lacey.
Not that Tumwater might not want to do it, but thanks for, yeah.
No good of the order, except that it was nice that the Lacey City Council unanimously agreed to give the $3.5 million of our general fund money to the Franz Anderson project. So that's good news, and happy to see that's going forward.
Thank you. Great news. Yum. Do we have anyone from Yum here tonight? No. Okay. And then I guess from the county, the Board of County Commissioners yesterday approved the ILA between the City of Olympia for the Home Fund. So that's moved forward from our end of things. So we're very excited about that. And then I kind of wanted to, the point in time count is happening at the beginning of early next year. And Keely, what are the dates again? I'm sorry.
No problem. The point in time count will be taking account for where people sleep on the night of the 26th of January. So we will be doing a night count on that night. And then we will have activities from the 27th through the 1st of February. So there's a lot more information coming soon.
Thank you. So just so that is kind of in your minds. And I just wanted to take some time to thank all of the jurisdictions and all of the staff members for this year. It's been really hard. We've had a lot of curveballs. We've had a lot of bumps along the way. But thank you for always coming back to the table and working on solutions. Like, we couldn't be where we are right now if we all weren't here. And so I really want to thank you. I look forward to next year, and I hope everyone has some happy holidays and a happy new year. With that, it is 5:51. We don't need a motion, right? We can just say peace out. Okay. Bye, everyone. Good night.